My phone vibrated violently on the nightstand, rattling me awake at exactly 6 a.m. Groggy, I squinted at the glowing screen. It was Grandpa Henry's neighbor, Margaret Simmons. Margaret calling at dawn wasn't just unusual, it was alarming. "Michael, they're cutting down your grandfather's oak trees." Her voice was shaking with a mix of rage and disbelief. "They brought in bulldozers early this morning. You need to come quickly." I sat bolt upright, my pulse accelerating. Grandpa's land, the 100-year-old farm outside of Fairview, had been in our family since before my own father was born. Those oak trees had been planted by Grandpa himself when he was young. There had to be some mistake. "Are you sure, Margaret?" I asked, fighting to clear my head. "Grandpa never said anything about selling any land. Maybe they're on the wrong property." Margaret's voice grew sharper. "Michael, listen to me. I know your land as well as I know my own. They've put up big signs announcing a new development. They've already cut down at least a dozen trees near the creek." I was out of bed before I hung up, pulling on clothes while my mind raced. Grandpa Henry passed away 8 months ago, leaving his entire estate to me, his only living heir. I had spent every summer of my childhood at that farm, fishing by the creek, playing beneath the very oaks now reportedly being destroyed. Grandpa always swore that land would remain untouched, a legacy to be preserved for future generations. Within 10 minutes, I had tossed a bag into the passenger seat and started the long drive out of the city toward Fairview. The familiar 2-hour route felt twice as long today, my anxiety rising with each mile marker. Something felt very wrong. When I finally arrived in town, the peaceful country roads leading to Grandpa's property were crowded with trucks. Heavy machinery churned up dust clouds in the distance. My heart sank as I pulled over to a large white sign that read, "Future site of Willowbrook Estates, 120 exclusive homes starting at $500,000. I left my car at the roadside, making my way toward a group of people wearing bright yellow safety vests. A woman in a tailored gray suit stood among them, clipboard in hand, issuing instructions. "Excuse me?" I called out sharply. She turned, looking irritated at being interrupted. "Yes?" she said crisply, her dark eyes narrowing as she quickly sized me up. "What's going on here?" "This is my grandfather's property, Henry Walker's farm." She raised an eyebrow and adjusted her blazer. "I'm Linda Harris, president of Willowbrook's Homeowners Association. I'm sorry, but you must be mistaken. This property was purchased legally nearly a year ago by Willowbrook Developments, LLC. All permits are approved." "That can't be right," I shot back. "Grandpa would have told me if he'd sold any land. He promised this farm would always stay in the family." Her smile was cold and condescending. "Perhaps your grandfather didn't inform you. The transaction was fully completed months ago. If you have questions, feel free to contact our legal department." She handed me a business card, dismissing me immediately as she turned back to her workers. Stunned and disoriented, I watched as bulldozers tore mercilessly into the earth. I spotted Margaret standing by the fence, her hands gripping the wooden rail tightly, tears shining in her eyes. "Margaret," I said, reaching her side, "did Grandpa ever mention selling to you?" "Never," she whispered, shaking her head. "He loved this land, Michael. He always said this place was sacred. Before he passed, he was digging through his old office late into the night, saying he had to protect something. He was so worried." My thoughts raced to Grandpa's cluttered office, filled with dusty ledgers, notebooks, and mementos of his life. I hadn't brought myself to sort through his belongings after the funeral. It was too painful. But now, urgency compelled me. I needed answers, and fast. Margaret offered me the spare key she'd kept for emergencies, squeezing my shoulder gently. "If anyone can get to the bottom of this, it's you, Michael." Inside the farmhouse, Grandpa's office was untouched, frozen in time. The air was thick with the familiar smell of old paper and tobacco. A sense of sadness washed over me as I scanned the room, wondering where to begin. Hours passed as I sorted through files labeled meticulously by year, Crop records, taxes, letters from neighbors. Frustration mounted with each passing moment as I found nothing about a land sale or any indication Grandpa ever considered selling. Just as night fell, I was about to give up when my foot pressed against a loose floorboard beneath Grandpa's desk. I pried it open carefully, revealing a small, rusted metal box secured by a combination lock. I paused, thinking hard. Grandpa was sentimental. He used my grandmother's birthday, 0703, for everything. Holding my breath, I turned the dials, and the box clicked open easily. Inside was a faded envelope addressed to me, labeled simply, "If something happens." Hands trembling, I unfolded the letter. Grandpa's familiar handwriting jumped off the page. "Michael, if you're reading this, it means they're trying to take what's ours. I never sold our land. They pressured me for years, but I refused. Whatever they claim, it's lies. The truth is in the old county records and surveys I've hidden here. Find the original documents. They'll prove our ownership once and for all." My heartbeat quickened as I pulled more yellowed papers from the box. Among them was an aged map from 1935 and another updated survey from 1986. Comparing them quickly, I saw something shocking. The older survey clearly showed our property boundaries extending far beyond what was currently recorded. Not just the area under construction, but even existing homes within Willowbrook Estates appeared to be built on our land. I stared at the documents, realization hitting me like lightning. Grandpa had been quietly preparing for this fight long before his death. He knew this day would come. Taking a deep breath, I folded the letter carefully and placed it into my pocket. Outside, the distant rumble of heavy equipment reminded me of the urgency. Tomorrow, I would need legal counsel. Tomorrow, I'd confront Linda Harris and her powerful HOA. But tonight, for the first time since Grandpa's death, I felt his presence guiding me. The fight had just begun, and I wasn't about to let him down. I hardly slept that night, the documents and maps spread across the kitchen table haunting me like ghosts from Grandpa's past. When the sun finally rose, I drove straight to Fairview's only law office, run by Raymond Sullivan, an old family friend whose firm had served our small town for over 40 years. His secretary gave me an odd look as I stormed into the office unannounced. "I need to see Mr. Sullivan immediately," I said breathlessly. Raymond stepped out, his eyebrows raised with curiosity. "Michael? It's been years. Come on in." I quickly laid out everything. The unexpected call from Margaret, the bulldozers, the mysterious HOA woman named Linda Harris, and the hidden box Grandpa had left for me. Raymond listened carefully, nodding as he reviewed the documents and the aged surveys. After several tense moments, he removed his reading glasses, shaking his head in disbelief. "Michael, this isn't just a small misunderstanding. According to these original surveys, Willowbrook Estates has encroached on your grandfather's land by almost 100 acres. That's not just illegal, it's outright theft." "But how did this happen without anyone noticing?" I asked, confused and frustrated. "Wouldn't there be county records or something?" Raymond picked up his phone and dialed the county assessor's office. After some back and forth, a startled voice answered through the speakerphone. "Sir, the records indicate a boundary adjustment was filed in 1992, shifting the property line westward." "Authorized by whom?" Raymond demanded. "It was signed by Henry Walker," the voice replied uncertainly. "Impossible," I said firmly, leaning forward. Grandpa was recovering from hip surgery that year. He was bedridden for months. He couldn't have signed anything. Raymond's eyes darkened. "That suggests forgery. Someone altered official county records to steal your family's land." My stomach twisted. Grandpa had fought quietly against this injustice for decades, probably suspecting but unable to prove it. Now it was my turn. "What can we do?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. Raymond sighed heavily, sitting back in his chair. "We file an emergency injunction immediately to halt construction and demand a court investigation. This won't be easy. They'll fight hard. But the truth is on your side. I nodded, determined. Do it. Whatever it takes. An hour later, I drove straight to the Fairview County Records Office to request everything they had on Willowbrook developments. My hands trembled slightly as I paged through stacks of filings, building permits, and contracts dating back years. And then, buried beneath property transfers and zoning approvals, I found something that made my pulse quicken. A document listing Linda Harris herself as co-owner of the development, alongside County Commissioner Gary Thompson and 2 local planning board members. A loan application for $12 million caught my attention next. It was dated just 4 months earlier, listing my grandfather's land as collateral for funding their luxury homes project. The signature authorizing this loan was eerily similar to the fraudulent boundary adjustment from 1992. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Raymond Sullivan. "We got the injunction, Michael. Construction stops today, but brace yourself. This will get ugly." A rush of relief surged through me, but I knew he was right. Linda Harris and her HOA wouldn't give up easily. I left the records office and drove toward town, deciding to visit the Fairview Gazette. If local authorities wouldn't help, maybe the public would. Inside the tiny newspaper office, the editor, Anna Carson, looked up surprised. "Michael Walker? It's been forever. How can I help you?" "Anna, I think I've uncovered major fraud involving Willowbrook Estates. I believe Linda Harris and several county officials have illegally claimed part of my grandfather's farm." Her eyes lit up with journalistic curiosity. "Do you have evidence?" I handed over my documents, watching her face shift from skepticism to fascination as she flipped through them. Finally, she looked up sharply. "This could be huge. I'll dig into their approvals process right away. These names, Gary Thompson, Linda Harris, this reeks of corruption." When I returned to the farm, Margaret was waiting on the porch, an anxious expression on her face. "Michael, Linda Harris was here earlier. She said something about your little stunt costing everyone dearly." "Let her talk," I replied grimly. "She has no idea what we've uncovered." I spent the rest of the afternoon walking the property, photographing the damaged trees and the bulldozed earth. Each image felt like a knife in my chest. Grandpa would have been heartbroken to see his beloved land defaced. As evening settled, headlights suddenly pierced the driveway. I tensed, expecting another confrontation with Linda. Instead, an unfamiliar car parked beside mine, and a man I recognized from the HOA meeting stepped out nervously. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said quietly. "My name is Tom Jenkins. I live in Willowbrook Estates. After your lawyer halted construction, Linda called an emergency HOA meeting. She told everyone you're just after money, that you'll try to take away our homes." "I'm not here to hurt homeowners," I reassured him quickly. "I'm trying to fix a wrong. My grandfather's land was stolen. They forged records." Tom interrupted, his voice low and urgent. "There's something else you should know. Linda's been running the HOA finances without oversight for years. Fees keep going up, but no improvements ever happen. I tried asking questions once, and suddenly I got fined for trivial violations. $500 for my mailbox being the wrong shade of white. She's been intimidating homeowners into silence." I listened intently, anger building in my chest. "How many people has she done this to?" Tom sighed deeply. "Nearly everyone. Nobody dares stand up to her. But after your confrontation, people started whispering. You've given us hope. If you really mean what you say, you might have more allies than you realize." I thanked Tom as he drove away, his words echoing in my mind. Linda Harris had made enemies, and I wasn't alone in this fight. That night, the farmhouse felt colder, emptier. I stared out at the darkened fields, mentally preparing myself. Tomorrow, the real battle would begin. Linda had stolen Grandpa's legacy, and I intended to take it back, no matter how dirty the fight became. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity. Every seat was taken, and dozens stood against the walls, murmuring anxiously. After months of sleepless nights, endless investigations, and countless legal battles, it all came down to this moment. I sat at the plaintiff's table, next to Raymond, trying to steady my racing heart. Across from us, Linda Harris sat confidently, her perfectly styled hair and immaculate suit portraying calm assurance. But her eyes betrayed anxiety. Beside her were Gary Thompson, the county commissioner, and several prominent officials implicated in the fraud. They whispered nervously among themselves, occasionally glancing over at me with thinly veiled hostility. "All rise," the bailiff called sharply. Judge Rebecca Ellis entered, her expression stern, demanding silence with her mere presence. As we sat back down, she cleared her throat and began. After reviewing all submitted evidence and testimony from both parties, this court finds itself facing a disturbing and egregious pattern of misconduct that cannot be overlooked. Linda's posture stiffened noticeably, her hands clenched tightly in front of her. Judge Ellis continued, "Evidence has conclusively demonstrated that in 1992, the boundaries of the Walker family farm were altered fraudulently. This unlawful adjustment allowed Willowbrook Estates, led by Ms. Harris and supported by certain county officials, to unlawfully claim nearly 100 acres of the plaintiff's rightful property." Whispers rippled throughout the courtroom, many eyes widened in shock, and I could feel Margaret gripping my arm tightly from behind. "Furthermore," the judge added gravely, "this court has reviewed substantial evidence provided by Mr. Raymond Sullivan, including verified expert testimony, financial audits, and affidavits from affected homeowners. The defendant, Ms. Harris, through the Willowbrook HOA, systematically abused her position by leveraging excessive fines, manipulating finances for personal benefit, and intimidating residents who opposed her policies." A wave of gasps swept through the spectators. Tom Jenkins, seated nearby, nodded slowly, his eyes shining with vindication. Linda's expression turned brittle, a faint sheen of perspiration visible on her forehead. "Given the gravity of these violations," Judge Ellis said firmly, "this court orders the immediate cessation of all Willowbrook Estates construction activities. Furthermore, the property boundaries shall be restored to their original specifications as per the authenticated survey from 1910, submitted by the plaintiff." Relief washed over me, momentarily overwhelming the exhaustion I felt. But the judge wasn't finished. "In addition, due to the severe breach of public trust, this court recommends criminal charges against Ms. Harris and Mr. Thompson for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit property theft." Linda sprang to her feet, outraged. "Your Honor, this is absurd." Judge Ellis silenced her with a sharp glance. "Ms. Harris, your objections are noted and dismissed. Your conduct has inflicted substantial harm upon this community, and justice demands accountability." Linda slumped back into her chair, defeated, the confidence drained from her eyes. Behind her, Gary Thompson buried his face in his hands, shoulders shaking slightly. After the ruling, as the courtroom emptied, neighbors and homeowners approached me, shaking my hand and offering gratitude. Sarah, Tom's wife, wiped tears from her eyes, thanking me quietly. Margaret hugged me warmly, whispering, "Your grandfather would be so proud." Raymond gave me a hearty pat on the back. "You did good, Michael." Henry would have smiled seeing justice served today. That evening, Fairview held an impromptu celebration at Grandpa's farm. Hundreds gathered, bringing food, drinks, and stories. Kids ran around freely, neighbors chatted excitedly, and the air felt alive with possibility. Margaret's porch overflowed with laughter as people traded tales of how they'd endured Linda's reign and how relieved they were to finally reclaim their community. I wandered to the field, looking at the peaceful acres Grandpa had cherished. Behind me, I heard footsteps and turned to see Linda Harris approaching hesitantly, accompanied by a police officer. Her eyes met mine briefly, full of bitterness. "You think you've won," she hissed softly. But you have no idea what you've started. I smiled calmly. Actually, Linda, what you started, greed, lies, intimidation, only showed everyone how much better things could be. You didn't just lose. You reminded this town what it means to stand together. She stared at me wordlessly, the fire fading from her gaze as the officer gently guided her toward the patrol car waiting nearby. When night fell, I stood on the porch with Raymond and Margaret, looking out at the peaceful landscape bathed in moonlight. Margaret sighed contentedly. It feels like Fairview again. Raymond nodded, sipping lemonade. Thanks to Henry's grandson. No, I corrected quietly. Thanks to Henry himself. Grandpa knew his land would need defending, even after he was gone. He didn't just leave me acres of dirt. He left me courage, community, and purpose. Margaret smiled softly, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. He always knew you'd come home when it mattered most. In the days that followed, Fairview began to heal. The illegally built houses were carefully relocated outside Grandpa's property lines. Homeowners finally received fair deeds to their lands, and Tom Jenkins helped lead the formation of a new homeowners association, one committed to transparency, fairness, and community improvement. The wetlands Grandpa had loved so much were officially designated protected habitats, ensuring their beauty would last for generations. Nearly a year later, as construction of a small community park neared completion, I stood near the newly erected monument honoring my grandfather. It read simply, Henry Walker, guardian of the land and friend to Fairview. Looking around, I saw children playing freely, families laughing, and neighbors working together to plant trees in the park named in Grandpa's honor. I realized then that what had started as a personal fight to protect my inheritance had grown into something far more significant, a renewed sense of community. Linda Harris had attempted to steal land, wealth, and hope. But in her greed, she unknowingly gave us something even greater, the chance to rediscover our strength as neighbors and friends. Grandpa had always taught me that the most important battles aren't fought over property lines or money, but over integrity, honor, and the bonds that tie us together. And as I stood there beneath the clear blue sky, I understood the final lesson he'd left behind. The best legacy isn't just land, it's what we do with it, and how we protect it for those who follow. With that thought, I turned back toward Grandpa's farmhouse, now a vibrant community center, filled with life, laughter, and the promise of a brighter future. This, I realized with profound gratitude, was the true gift Grandpa had left me.